Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Zoe and in today's video I want to talk about all the books that I read in July. In the end I read 12 books. My overall pages were 1,584 pages. My average rating was 3.7. I had 2 books that I didn't rate. There no rating there. I DNF'd 1 book, had no 1 star, 1 to 2 star, 2 3 stars, 5 4 stars and 1 5 stars. And let's go to the books that I read. So let's start with my 2 DNFs. I think let's start this first. The first one was a German arc, so I don't want to talk a lot about this, but I read Queen of the Wicked by Teresa Sporrer. This is definitely a German book. I looked it up, and the thing is, with that book, my biggest problem was that it's a YA standalone fantasy book, and what is on the back, like the synopsis, I DNF'd this book I think at 32%, and at 32% there was already like finally the plot, the synopsis happened on the back. And especially for YA fantasy, I don't like this if like the story needs too long to get to the point what is on the back. And also for the fact that it was a standalone, it took me too long. And like the witch, she was like, oh, I'm such a badass. But when it gets to the point in the synopsis, it was like, so I didn't like the character and like the overall feeling. So I DNF'd this, but this was an arc, and I didn't even rate this on Goodreads, on NetGalley. I just put in like, I will not write a review about this. I DNF'd this. It's not fair to the author. And the other DNF was a softly DNF, so I planned to still read it. We Hunt the Flame by Hafsah Faizal. This too, I have so much problems to get into story. I was not here, and my biggest problem, in the beginning of July, I was in a big reading slump, and everything I touched, it didn't feel right. I was like, I did not really enjoy this. So when I started this, and there are a lot of words in the beginning, you have a glossary in the end where everything gets explained. But I was so tired to go back and forth just for like these small words. I am now looking back to this. I like it that it's in there, but for the beginning of the month when I was in a reading slump, this was not the right fit for me. So I will still try to read this. I also have the audiobook for that, but for now I will DNF this and come back to it later. So this is like a for now DNF, but I will definitely pick this up in the future again. Let's go to the books that I did not rate. First one that I read was Her Revenge by Jade Presley. This was the second book in, this was like Marvel fanfiction smut that was published, and I read the first book a few months back, and now I'm reading like, I read this one. And I know that I didn't like this. Like in the beginning of the book I was like, I will definitely not like this, and this was the case. So I decided to not rate this, because it seems kind of unfair also to the author to just read it full knowledge that I will not like this and rate this like a 1 star. So I just leave this like unrated, and it's a reverse harem story. I like reverse harem stories, but I do not like that the husbands of the women are all related to each other. They're like brothers. I don't like it. It's just like it's the incest for me, and it's not like that, like doing all the stuff together, but sometimes they do. Then also a book that I did not rate it is Solitaire by Oseman. So I read this and I listened to this as an audiobook. Solitaire is a book about the sister from Charlie, from Bartstopper, and the thing is, I liked in the book that you noticed that she's like really depressed in the book, and I like her description of like the depression, even though she don't have a full diagnosis. But why I end up giving this no rating is because I didn't really listen to the audiobook. Like, I listened to it, but also not. So Solitaire, I thought, just to give you a reference for all the who read it, I can't even tell what's the book even about anymore. And Solitaire, I thought till almost the end of the book that Solitaire was in the book the game Solitaire, like the card game, and not a group of people. I think I realized this at 75%, that this is a group of people that call themselves like Solitaire and not a card game. This is how how much out I was for the story. So I ended up giving this no rating, just to be fair to Alice Oseman, because I can give this like a better rating just because I didn't listen, but I also don't want to re-listen to it. So just math for me. Okay, let's get to my 2 stars. This was also in German arc, so it's already translated. Okay, but this is like a historical romance book that is based on Jane Austen novels, and there's a mixture of almost every Jane Austen book in there. After also listening to Persuaion, I can definitely tell that there's a lot of persuasion in the book, Mansfield Park and Pride and Prejudice. And my biggest problem of that was that I don't think that the Jane Austen inspired was bad, like these, but also it still was. So okay, I talk about another book that it was also an arc for a book, Jane Austen inspired book. So when I compared the 2 books to each other, I can definitely tell the book is called The Ladies from Somerset from Julie Marsh. The thing is with this book, that I read it 2 stars, is that I had a feeling that the scenes from the Jane Austen books were like copy and paste. If you read Persuasion, there's in the beginning of Persuasion you have the scene where Anne's father, who has like this big pile of money that he owned to people, and like they come into his house and like, you need to like pay for that and go. And it was almost the same scene in that book, and there were multiple scenes in it. I also, what I liked was that the female character in the story was like a big fan of musicals. She wrote a musical, her own musical, and this was like an ongoing plot line in the book. But the book was so basic written, like this book was so basic that it felt like something I wrote as a 12-year-old fan fiction. Like the next sentence, the overlap to the next scene was like kind of harsh, that I got to this point where I already questioned if the audiobook version that I got from this arc is like a cut version of the book, because it felt so odd to listen to this, like how they talk about it. And then the love interest that was in the story, it was so not so boring, but so not understandable, because they were so different from each other, and I didn't feel any connection between the 2. And in the end you have like a big plot scene also with the musical, and I still don't see it. I still don't see it why they are ended up together, or why the love interest was so like why they wanted to be together for the rest of their life. So I rated this 2 stars. I didn't like this. So then I have 3 stars. Okay, the first one is The Roommate Risk by Talia Hibbert. The book is about like 2 best friends, the man and the woman. I forgot the name, I'm so sorry. But both of them have problems. I remember now why giving this in the end 3 stars. Both of them have troubles in their life, and they talk about this very openly, and they're like already friends to each other. And they have, back then when they first meet, they had like something together, but it ended up being in a friendship. And with the roommate was like they moved in together and like living together, and now you have the risk that maybe something can finally happen between the two. And of course that it's going to happen, but both of them have still big problems in life. What I didn't like in this book was that, at least for the male part in the story, he talks always like, you know about my past. That was so hard. And it's not a problem that he is like, oh, you know about my hard past, because of course like a man can have a hard past too, but you don't, as a reader, you will not know what was hard in his past. Like you will not know, because he will not tell you. She's like, oh yeah, when I compare this with your story, I can do something with this information. Like I cannot. I cannot. What happened? Maybe I just overread it, but I like I have like a few ideas what maybe happened in his past, but it gets not fully explained, and this is why I didn't like this as much as I did with the other books that I read from her so far. So I ended up giving this 3 stars. It was overall still cute. I like them both together, but no. So, and the other 3 star I give A Game of Fate by Scarlett and Clair. Yeah, what can I tell you? A Game of Fate is A Touch of Darkness book out of this perspective from Hades. And my biggest problem with that was that I'm not interested in this. It was not bad, but it was also not good. And I only read this because of the reading order that Scarlett and Clair give to you for the whole A Touch of world. You need to read first A Touch of Darkness, then A Game of Fate, then the second book A Touch of Ruin, and then the second book from Hades' perspective. But this was so unnecessary, because you don't really get to know Hades in the first book well enough that it will justify a whole book just out of his perspective. And it's really just the book out of his perspective. You get a few new information that also don't justify a whole book. Like I would see this as a better solution if you will get to know this information in the second book, in A Touch of Ruin, and when maybe Hades tell her, Persephone, that what happened while he meet her. And what I really like to see is more like the mixed perspectives in one book, like Persephone's perspective than Hades' perspective, but not like with the same chapter, but like with the whole storyline. I'm more interested in that than a whole book just out of perspective, because it was like just like reheated soup. It was okay, you will eat it, but nah. So let's get to my 4 stars. 4 stars. 1 4-star I had was Widow's Web by Jennifer Estep. So this is the 7th book in the Elemental Assassin series. In the book it's about, I tell you now what is the series about, and really like what's going on in this specific book, because it will be a spoiler. Definitely, but in the whole book series it's about Jean Blanco. She's like a assassin, a trained assassin, and she has special powers, and she lives in like an utopian city where multiple people have like special powers, and you have this huge imbalance of like this powerful people and the like not so powerful people, or normal humans who don't have any powers. And so you read about her like killing like these bad peoples, or like for the bad peoples, and you have like one storyline, huge plot line, which is in the first 5 books, like an ongoing storyline with like one big enemy, and after the 5th book you get, or like after the 4th book, I think in the 5th book it starts, you get like a book each, but with like more like one minor enemy that Jim Blanco needs to fight. So, and I read the 7th book now because of my TBR game that I put out a book in Riga. This was the whole July TBR. That it was a huge mess because I need a little bit of a plan what to read. So this is why I changed in the August TBR. Maybe you noticed that I pick out the books from the TBR shop, but beforehand, like not when I'm done with the book, because it was a huge mess in July. This was, I think, the biggest problem I was in the reading slump, because I can't pick up any book from the shelf. I need to have like a full plan. So, but I really like this in the end. The thing is, I really like Jennifer Estep's writing style, but it's always like the same. It's like the same base you have all the time. It's the same, not really every time the same, but the fight scenes are similar to each other, and like the plot lines, and maybe the like huge like, oh my god, what's going to happen, and the like the love interest, which is not really bad. I like it, but I'm glad that I had such a huge break between the 6th and the 7th book, because I have the feeling that I could more concentrate on the 7th book now, on not reading this back to back. But yeah, this was a 4-star for me. Then I read Stuck With You by Ali Hazelwood. This is like from her stemless novellas. I think I read it in the last month. I read the first one, like the Under One Roof. And now I read Stuck With You. Stuck With You is about a couple that is stuck together in an elevator. And I liked here also like that you have like this back and forth between the past and the current situation, and you will not get to know that both of them know each other beforehand, before they are stuck together in the elevator. There's also like a miscommunication trope, but I think at least in this book it didn't bother me that much, because I had a feeling that it was relatable why there was a miscommunication, or why it ended up being in this situation, because this was more an adult theme. I ended up really liking this, also the vibes between them, and I definitely enjoyed this more than Under One Roof, so I'm giving this 4 stars. So this one is translated, and it's A Lady's Guide to Fortune Hunting by Sophie Irwin. And this book, I get also the German arc from that. This is also Jane Austen inspired, and I would definitely say this is more inspired by Pride and Prejudice, and I really liked this. It was fun. I like the feminist stuff that happened in the story. This happened also like in the other one that I talked before, like 2-star, but it was so much better in this Sophie Irwin book. I already forgot. You get multiple perspectives in the book. You get this from the female character and the male character. You didn't have this in the other one that I talked before. Forget the other one. This was bad. The other one was bad. It can be in a trash bin where it belongs. We talk about this one. This was perfect. Okay, it's not totally perfect, but okay. I really liked it, the multiple perspectives. So you get the perspective from the woman in the story, who is like this broke woman that needs to take care of 4 sisters. There are 5, like also in Pride and Prejudice with Elsie. She also has like 4 sisters, and she has like, she's broke. They have also a lot of money that they own to other people, and the parents are dead, and she needs to get a rich husband. She don't want to do this, but she needs to do this in order to like the family be intact and be together. And you, on the other hand, you have James. James is the male interest in the story, but in the beginning it was not really clear that he was the male love interest, and he was this rich person in the story. But you, the good part about this story was that you get to know out of his perspective what social pressure he has. Like, she has, the woman in the story has the social pressure that, okay, I need to marry rich, how to get a husband in like a couple of days, weeks. I don't want to do this, but I need to learn the standards, the tone, what to do in this. And on the other hand, you have him who's like, okay, I am the tone, I know everything, but also the pressure for the men in the society is so high. And I really liked that you read about this and read about the imbalance between men and women in history in like a good way, in an understandable way. Yeah, I really like this. Why I didn't like this in the end, why I didn't give this in the 5 stars, it was like this was also I think the thing in the Pride and Prejudice, I think maybe you're just too much a people pleaser that I can't really understand this, but I didn't really like this how James in the story couldn't really figure out what's the problem for her. Like, he was not really understandable that she needs a husband. Another 4-star is Our Wind Ends. If you watch my last month's wrap up, you will know that I didn't really like These One and the Lights. I give this in the end 2 stars. I give this 4 stars in the end. So what is my issue with that? I think Our Wind Ends should be the honor book. Get rid of These One and the Lights, or just add a few glimpses of These One and the Lights in Our Wind Ends, like maybe the plot line, because I have the feeling that we get here more to the enemies to lovers that we got promised in the first book, because it was here more prominent. In the first book, These One and the Lights, you have more the feeling that, like, okay, Juliet and Roma, they already know each other, they already had something to each other, but you don't really get a flashback from that, what happened back then, or how was the relationship that ended them being together in like this situation, and they were not really enemies. But here I felt more the connection between each other. There was more like enemies to lovers that I understand, and also like the side characters. I also like that there are not that much bugs in the books that was in the other one, and they were still there. And the biggest issue in that one is the traitor in the story. I was really surprised to see in the end who the traitor was, and honestly I'm not really excited for the future books, because I am on the fence if I want to read even A Lady's Fortune, whatever. But I definitely like this more than the first book. Would I recommend this book? Not really. I think my biggest issue with the whole duology was more that it was promised as a fantasy. It's definitely not a fantasy. Only one thing I want to add, if you want to have the full on conversation how Lucy, Simone and I like this book, you can watch the live show from Our Wind Ends. I will link this in the description down below, because I read this for Lucy's book club. For my friends Cassie and Hanani's read along for the Percy Jackson series, I read the 5th book in the Percy Jackson series. I think I give this near 4 stars. I think this book was a great end to the story. There were a few things that I didn't really like, but it doesn't matter now. I think Percy Jackson is a great series. I wished I had the series as a teenager or like a middle grader, because I think I would eat this up in the story. I would eat this up. I wished I had this back then. I mean, it was there back then, but I didn't read it, and I don't know why. Because I think when I was in the middle grade age, like Harry Potter was more prominent than Percy Jackson. I also had almost no friends who really read Percy Jackson, so I don't know, it was just not in my school or a thing to read Percy Jackson. Honestly, it was not even a thing to read. It was just me that read. But okay, so what is my biggest issue? My biggest issue in these books is how they romanticize the gods. Not really how he romanticized the gods, because it's not really romanticized, For me, my biggest issue is that already in the first book, when like they said to the kids, yeah, the God, your father, your mother, they really loved your parent, your other parent, but they can't. And I really think if you really loved, okay, if my father was a god like Poseidon, let me be Percy Jackson. If my father Poseidon really loved my mother, why do I have like 4 other siblings? Why do I have more siblings from a different parent? Can you explain that? And why do you have a wife and also like a godchild and betrayed that wife? Can you tell me that? And the only explanation for that is right. But of course, in the 5th book, like there's murder, children dying, torture, violence, but you can't talk about rape. What? I mean, Zeus, he really loved every parent and the other parent in the story, like the horse, Europa, the child. He loved them all. He loved them all so much that he didn't wait for consent. So I think this is the most thing that pissed me off, and I think you can talk about this. You don't need to be brutally honest, but you can still say at least that maybe the gods are assholes and they don't really care about the other parent. I don't see the need to romanticize the gods and what they are, and also for the fact that like the children know that the godparent don't fucking care about them. They don't fucking care about them. If they would care, they will recognize the children. So I really liked what Percy did in the end of this book, because it was fucking fair to the other kids. I like Hermes kids, I'm sorry, there's a full-on hut for all of them. There's not even space anymore that they can all lie in one bed and have like the sex on the ground. If they even are the child from Hermes, they don't fucking know. And you won't want to say that Hermes liked each parent. If he really loved him, he would not produce another child. So I don't know why Riordan romanticize that. And you can be honest to them, because the children in the story already know that their fucking parent give a fucking shit about them. So you can talk about that. You don't need to be brutally honest. I mean, and a few kids of them are like 9, okay? This was my last watch of the Percy Jackson series. Then I read Persuaion by Jane Austen. I watched Persuaion last month, the new Netflix movie, and I need to say that I don't mind it. I think it I know I will destroy a lot of people's minds, but I personally think after watching Persuaion, reading Persuaion, and having the compare of that, I think that Persuaion the movie was a great adaptation to modernize Persuaion as a book, or Jane Austen novels in particular, because it got explained, and you see in a modern way how Persuaion is if you will modernize it. Of course, if you like classics and you like Jane Austen, like I do, I like Jane Austen, I like the classics. It's not a good adaptation, but for people who don't get really along with classics and have a lot of trouble to read classics, to understand classics, especially with the social standards that you have in the stories, and you will not know about, like also with the part maybe of divorce and stuff like that. It is a huge thing, and I also only know about this because I watched YouTube channels that explained me that. So if you don't know about this, you can really understand the books. So I like the Persuasion film for the thing that that what the Persuasion movie can do for people who don't understand classics. So, but back to Persuasion as a book. I really liked this. I think it was funny. I like if you see this in the way that Jane Austen sitting there maybe at her sister's house, living there because she had no husband, and writing this with her own feather, and is like sitting there and laughing. I really like the book for what it is, and I love how sarcastic it is. I can definitely recommend this to you, but I would still say that I like Emma more than I did with Persuasion. So far I would rank this Emma, Pride and Prejudice, Persuasion, and then Mansfield Park. So these are the only 4 novels I read so far from her. There are like a little more stories. I think Nothing Abbey, Sense and Sensibility, and then like short stories like Lady Susan and stuff like that. So I can't wait to read these, but I can definitely recommend Jane Austen books to you. The last book was my only 5-star this month, and honestly I almost lost it. And I thought I will never have a 5-star in this month, but The Gilded Cage by Noni was my Lord and Savior for this month. I love the story. First of all, Prison Healer is the first one. So if you haven't read The Prison Healer so far, in The Prison Healer it's about Kiva. Kiva lives in this prison and is the healer in the prison. So prison healer because she is the prison healer. And one day the rebel queen show up and she needs to heal her, so the rebel queen can take part of a trial that needs to, like, where she needs to fight for her life or death. And it was kind of unnecessary because even if she survived that, she will still be executed. But okay. But Kiva couldn't heal the queen, or can't heal her fast enough. So she takes part in this trial, and you read in The Prison Healer about this trial. This is all in the synopsis, okay? So don't come for me. In the second book, The Gilded Cage, you will know more about Kiva's story, and I need to say that I really like Kiva as a character. I also like the Jaren in the story and like their relationship with each other, and it was a really big conflict for her and also a little bit for him, and I really liked to read about this, but also the inner monologue from Kiva and this conflict that she has to fight for her family that doesn't really care about her, or for her new family that care really much for her. But this was this conflict of like the family feud that they have. So I really like this, and I give this in the end 5 stars. This was my Lord and Savior for the month, like I said, and I can't wait to read the next book in the series. But I also don't want to read this because I don't want the series to end. So this is why I still have like the not read the 3rd book. But yeah, this was my complete reading month of July. Like I say, I have a lot of books on my list that I honestly have a lot of books that I really liked, but also I think the bad books overshadow it, but it's okay. So let me know in the comments what you read in July and how your July month was. And then, I mean, we're almost done with August if you're seeing this, so I'm so sorry that I'm late. But I hope you have an amazing July. I hope you have an amazing August so far. And I hope you all drink enough water because of this heat everywhere. And then I wish you all an amazing week. And then I will see you in my next video. Bye!